and sent them back. Maybe the day before I got it. And so there was a lot of, this was a lot of mortar, heavy mortar, and a lot of heavy artillery battles there. And I read later on that we were short of ammunition because they were taking ammunition. Actually, they were short of ammunition because Le Havre had not been taken yet, and they were still doing everything through Omaha Beach, and they rationed. And then finally, one of the generals of the whole campaign there, Brest, asked Eisenhower he had to have more artillery ammunition because they were, outgunning us, and so that happened there. Now, this is where, on August 28th, I found out later, I saw an item that I had received a Bronze Star. So, what happened is, we were at a static position on the back of a small hedgerow in front of a sunken road. And middle of in the daylight, along came an American Jeep with 4 Germans in it. And 2 of them were officers and 2 were enlisted men, and one was an officer dressed in, I'm just describing this, I didn't pay attention at first, dressed in a dress-type uniform, all spick and Spanish, not a combat. He was not a combat, he was a staff officer. So when this came up, I could see this was an American Jeep with a star in the front, and just like a regular American Jeep, absolutely untouched, and there's 4 Germans in it, and I stopped it. And so I went up and I captured this Jeep, and I regret that I didn't know the rank of this guy, because I had never seen a German officer before, certainly not in a dress uniform. So I don't know what he was. But anyway, he was a staff officer, and so I captured the 4 guys, and then by that time, the rest of my squad, joined in. And I took this guy, told him I wanted his pistol. He had a 25 caliber Mauser pistol and a nice shiny Cordovan holster. Told him I wanted that. He had a pair of fancy leather gloves with high cuffs on them, and I told him I wanted that. Then I sent him back to company headquarters. And so I knew I did this, okay? But I didn't know, nobody ever told me that's what I got my Bronze Star for. So Joe Belkowski, who I told her that's about Joe Belkowski, in his conversations with Colonel Whitefoot, who used to live up in Sparks or someplace up here. He lived there. He interviewed him many, many times, Joe did. And so I told Joe, what happened on the 28th? He said, well, you tell me. So I said, well, I told him that I just told you. I captured this Jeep. And the officer says, well, Steve, I'm 95% sure I know what happened. Why you got the Bronze Star? So then I said, well, this guy was a staff officer. Steve, I'm 100% sure why. And so Joe said that in talking to Whitefoot remembers that they got a battle plan in a briefcase that this guy was carrying that gave the plans of an attack that they were going to plan against us. And he said, Whitefoot said, well, who got this information? He says, Sergeant Melnikoff. He says, well, put him in for a Bronze Star. This is what Joe told me. I don't have any other confirmation but that. And then Joe says that between that information and other information they got, that forestalled this attack that they were going to do against us in Brittany.
That would have been late August that happened?
August 28th.
August 28th. And do you have any idea why they were in an American Jeep?
Yeah, they captured it.
They had captured the Jeep.
See, the Germans were more fluid than we are.
Duh. They captured the Jeep.
Yeah. So why not use that instead of the Volkswagen? Or they didn't have it. Or or they were short of vehicles. The Germans were always short of vehicles. They used a lot of horse and buggies.
How did they not see you? Where did you come out of the woods?
No, right down the sunken road. They come around the corner.
Yeah.
Remember I told you it was kind of a fluid situation?
Yeah,
where,
right.
Where, you know, we had this hill here and they had that hill.
Right.
Or they had that fort.
Oh, they went the wrong way or
and
something.
they went the wrong way and they ran right into us. And so they thought that was a clear road. And that was the same road I told you someday previously or after that where a couple of squads of Germans marched right through, but we were sleeping, and before we found out what was going on, they were by us and gone.
Yeah.
And we just heard the hobbling of the boots. And yeah. And so what people don't realize is the Germans were in a war for 5 years. Let's see, 1939, they were at war for 5 years. Okay? And so they run out of equipment. So they had no problem using Russian trucks or Czechoslovakian trucks or Polish trucks or guns or machine guns or anything that they could get. I even heard that the Germans there was a certain tank that if they captured a Russian tank that was disabled, they would take the gun out of that tank and mount it in their tank because their guns were superior to the Germans. But we never did that. We never did that.
These guys are coming down a sunken road in this Jeep.
Yes.
And where are you in this sunken road?
I'm not in a sunken road. I'm in behind this low hedgerow at the top of the sunken road. When they come around this corner, I don't know, we probably knew a couple of Germans there. I probably halt or something. I hollered at them and they stopped. And I had my M1 on and they stopped.
And then they were smart enough not to open fire. They knew they were cooked.
Fight. They just gave up right there.
Now, you got the Bronze Star and out of that, and the Joe Balkowski, for the record, who we're talking about, is the historian of the 29th Infantry Division, and Colonel Whiteford, he would have been the battalion commander.
Battalion, first battalion commander.
First battalion commander. But the important thing is what happened to the Mauser and the gloves. Did you
In my safe deposit box.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Are they really?
So if somebody doesn't believe that story.
That's the best. That's a good story.
Yeah. The other thing is,
he came home with the Mauser.
Hey, Chris, you wouldn't go to combat with a 25 caliber pistol. You at least want a 38 caliber, you know? Or I think the Germans, theirs was the 9mm, whatever the millimeter is. 9mm is a little bit different than a 38. You know, a couple of small fraction difference. So you would at least have one of those. You wouldn't go, or you'd have a machine pistol or something. And you wouldn't be wearing polished boots and fancy gloves and a uniform with a belt on it, with no combat, no dust on them, with a build hat.
This guy's big time.
Yeah, but see, unfortunately, Chris, I do not know a colonel from a major or captain. I would know one from another. I never saw a German officer. And how would I know, you know? So I didn't know. I wish that I could have taken his picture.
So they give up. They give up. And how do you approach him to say this? I want the gun.
You have a way.
Yeah, I know. I want to hear it. Come on.
I probably said, hey,
for the videotape.
You know, whatever. We probably knew a dozen German words. You know, halt, rousing means, you know, fast or something. We knew, you know, from being around, we knew a few German words probably. And he took the belt. He took his belt to give me the pistol, put the belt back on. I didn't want the belt. I could have had the belt too, but I didn't think of that. I just said, give me that pistol. And I'm disarming him, right? So,
right.
Yeah. And the other guys just were there. And they didn't even bother to change the nomenclature on the front of the Jeep, like it has 29th Division on it or 1st Division or whatever. The big stars right by the hood of the Jeep. They don't change anything. They just, that was their Jeep.
Oh, man.
So I captured a Jeep on top of the 4 guys.
Captured the Jeep.
I should have taken it home.
Yeah, you should have had that in your safe deposit box. That's good. That's a good one.
Yeah. It's in this book, you know.
Well, I can't wait to read it now. That's great. I've got it. Yeah, that's a good story.
Yeah, well, that's so he told me that Whiteford said that, he said that Joe told me that and other information that they received was you know, kind of vital in some whatever that attack or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
And that was on the 28th of August, and then you were wounded on the 14th, 14th of September.
And the rest was just regular combat, just, you know.
Yeah.
You just go ahead, and after a while, Chris, it's just a repetition of what it's just like.
I bet you it is.
You take, in other words, after a while, you just kind of you get numb. You take this town, right?
Yep.
And then next day you got to take the next town, or 2 days later you got to take the next village, or the next whatever target they assign you. They just keep going. And then periodically, during that whole period of time, every so often they would pull the unit back and give them like a rest area, like, you know, and rest, just to, well, to sort of regroup, give replacements and whatnot.
Those days when you arrived in Vera, I think you said 5 August, and then you move out, and then on to Brest, and you're trucked, and then you're moving in the Brest area in late August there. It's more of the same. It's more of taking the ground.
Take this ground, take this hill, and just kept going. Yeah.
And you're meeting the same kind of resistance that you met in
it's
the early part of Normandy, right?
Only as I recall it, we seemed to be more artillery than it was in a hedgerow when I was with them.
That's pretty hard, isn't it? That the artillery that's coming in, isn't it? The mortars.
You get artillery and mortar, and they had, and this was a static situation. They had all the ammunition they wanted.
Yep.
There was no shortage of it, and they would just whenever they felt like it, they would send them in, and yeah, you just hope that they don't get you. That's all.
You're in the foxholes.
Yeah. Foxhole. Sometimes you didn't bother digging a foxhole if the hedgerow was a very good protection. Sometimes you could just as well, and you get tired sometimes. You know, Christ, you got to sleep, or you got to spend digging a hole. You sometimes said the hell with it, you know. And you did that sometimes. You did, and you know it. Sometimes you get to a place you couldn't dig. It was the ground was so hard or something, and you just did without. And one thing I also remember is that when we were in Brittany and we were in combat, it was sort of it wasn't as intense sometimes. It was on and off, and the general made them bring up one hot meal every day to us. They had to bring one hot meal a day. And those guys in back, they hated that, because they had to come up with a Jeep, you know, and those stacked cans with steak sandwich or something you could eat on a run, like, you know, steak sandwich or chicken, fried chicken and stuff like that, you know. And they'd have to bring it up, and they hated that. The minute they, hurry up guys, hurry up, I gotta go back.
Yeah, they want to be around.
No, they want to get back there, yeah.
They didn't want to face that stuff.
Yeah. First sergeants were the best jobs. You never see them at all. They're always back there. Yeah.
When you were wounded on the 14th of September, you were evacuated again back to England.
Back to England, and I think it was somewhere around Birmingham.
All right.
And again, I don't remember too much about that. I really don't.
Recovered in Birmingham.
Somewhere in the area of Birmingham this time.
They start to blend in, don't they?
When you repeat, you know, the same thing over and over again, you know, one field, another field with a hill, it just gets.
Yeah, it gets tough. And what happened subsequent to going back to Birmingham? You remember how long you were there? How long you were there?
In Birmingham, I didn't get back on duty till December 3rd. I joined the up in Germany, somewhere around Aldenhoven, in Germany.
All right. Let me ask you about the training or the indoctrination, whatever the philosophy. They still want to bring you back if you're mobile enough. Your wounds were not.
That's right.
Yep. Bringing you back.
They bring you right back. Go back as a buck sergeant, right back to 3rd platoon,
3rd Platoon.
1st Battalion. Yeah.
You still recognize a lot of the guys at this point? Are they still?
Well, they're getting to be different. There's not there's not many guys you're going to recognize. You get down to the point where there's a lot of replacements. Yeah.
Where is 3rd Platoon of C Company 175th located in December of '44?
I believe it was around Aldenhoven, Germany.
Aldenhoven, Germany.
Yeah. That's where I joined them.
What's going on? What's the countryside look like? What are your quarters like?
Now the countryside is different. You're more in small villages. It's a little more populated. The towns look like they were a little bit bigger that you went through. Now you still got your stone houses, but now you get more like stone walls and a lot more open ground. The ground was more open.
Mm-hmm.
And the fighting was just a little different. It was, now you had sometimes the help of a tank, you had help of more of mortars and the help of more with artillery than we used to. Because they were able to maneuver a little bit. They could bring them around. In other words, in Normandy they were useless because the roads were too small and hedgerows, they couldn't function very well. But now they can function because now they've got a lot of open country. And we would get like a couple of tanks assigned to you sometimes.
You're still a buck sergeant?
Yeah.
At this point?
Yeah.
And so you're taking in charge of a squad at that point?
I've got a squad. Yeah.
And day in and day out, the kind of work that you're doing is what? Take the town? Take the village?
You just would, you're on the attack, you're taking this town, and then maybe the next town you don't take it, but the 115 takes it, and the next town maybe the 115 takes it, and then we just keep going into Germany. And I don't have the biggest recollection I have is when we're going along, and it's wait a minute. So it's getting close to Christmas. Now it's not Christmas yet, okay? And we're on a line, and maybe it wasn't Aldenhoven. Maybe I'm not so sure of the town. I take that back, because we're still in December, and the Bulge is going to happen, and we are in line, and I'm a buck sergeant, and we're on line, and it's in sort of a swampy, and a river in front of us, where we're very thinly placed. We're covering a lot of ground for a few people, and we're sleeping in the houses or basements at the daytime, and just before dark, at twilight, we go up and advance up to the line where we know the Germans are just across, just like a creek across from us. We can even hear them sometimes talking. You can hear some vehicles motion. We could even singing sometimes. And then then just before dawn, they would come back and go back into the houses again, and have nobody out there. It was just like we were, like a platoon was covering maybe a half a mile of territory. So all we had was like outposts, and then at night we would just bring guys and put them in line in case they would sneak over. And then, when the Battle of Bulge happened, it happened to the right of us. And we could hear the shelling and all of that, and they went behind us in Belgium, behind us, the Germans. They didn't attack the 29th. They massacred 2 American divisions. I don't know what the numbers were. But that's another place where I say something good happened to me, you know. The Bulge happened to the right. And at that time, the troops were so thin because Patton was fighting somewheres down in central France, and they took a group of sergeants out of line. I was one of them, and I know they did it to the 29th Division of combat sergeants, and maybe they did it to some of the other divisions, and they brought us back to regimental headquarters, the only time I was there, and from there we were sent to Hurley in Holland. And we got the assignment of training untrained troops to be infantrymen. We trained cooks, truck drivers, aircraft mechanics, clerks, and we tried to make a soldier out of them in 2 days. And each one of us, and I'm going to guess probably they'd give us like 1,000 men, and we'd give them 2 days of training, intense training, how to take a gun apart, how to fire it. The guys would say, Christ, I never fired a gun, I never trained with that. I says, listen, fella, learn, because you're going to be in the front lines day after tomorrow. And I was in charge of the armaments part of it, teaching them how to fire a gun, take it apart, fire a BAR, mostly just an M1. Show them how to fire a bazooka, take one guy out of the class, he could fire, the other guys would watch, and then show them how to fire a grenade launcher, and maybe let 2 or 3 guys try that, and the rest would watch. And in 2 days, they shipped them up to the front, and we'd get another batch. And we kept doing that for till we straightened out the line there, behind there. So that those poor guys were just sending it as cannon fodder. They had no idea what was going on, but that's what we did. But we tried to give them all the tricks we knew, all the experience we had. We tried to impart on them in 2 days.
It's pretty tough to do.
Yeah. So we just like different guys with different assignments, and but that's the way it was. There wasn't anybody to give them. Patton was too far away. They had no replacements to put in there, and so that's what they did. Some of the guys were tech sergeants, T5s, and cooks and sergeants, and we just put a gun in your hand, and they said, but they went. That's what
they had to throw them in the line.
There was, see, they annihilated 2 whole divisions, and they had nobody to put in their place, so they just put these guys up there. And of course, we were in Hurley, Holland. We could have showers. We had lived in some, buildings that were there. They gave us, and then after, once they stabilized that situation, then we back to the company.
That took you into January, I guess, into January '45.
Yeah.
Where were you over that part, the early winter of '45?
Well, during the winter, and there again, we went through these different towns, and I don't know which ones we took, which were like Searsdorf, and I can't remember some of those names, but we just kept gaining ground, and eventually, the 175th, we took Mönchengladbach. That was the biggest city taken up until that time. And I remember going to Mönchengladbach, and the thing that struck me most right there was, prior to this, the Germans were always able to bring their people back with them. And when we captured these towns, there wouldn't be any Germans there. There were, up until this time, pretty much. The Germans would evacuate them, and they had time to do it. Now this is a big city, and they couldn't evacuate, so we actually captured a whole bunch of Germans, and when we were there, I'm talking about civilian people, and I don't know if we were. It didn't seem like a great fight because they kind of gave up the city and took off because they couldn't defend it, and that was I think the biggest thing that I can remember, like the German people there, they were feared we could do something, but we never did anything wrong. We made them give up their guns and stuff, and they just were living there. We were living there, and so that was kind of a easy win for us. They kind of gave it up. And
when you were munching Gladbach, is that January, February, March 45?
It's probably sometime in January.
Probably
I would be hot butt to give you dates on it. The war
fast.
moved a lot faster now.
Yeah.
I remember we were C Company, but across the Ruhr River.
Okay.
And I can remember we practiced, you know, going over in boats, but actually we went over on a footbridge. And when we went over that bridge, footbridge, I can remember there was a private, and I used to remember his name, but then I'd forgotten over the time. And he was killed right on that footbridge. We had to walk over him to get across because we couldn't stop. And I can remember firing at something or other as I was going over that bridge. And so we went over the Ruhr River, and then later on I don't know how many more towns we captured. Then the next big, fairly hard fight was a place called Jülich, and there was a big fort there. We captured that, and pretty much we went through, and we were moving pretty fast, and we actually, they trucked us over the Rhine River to catch up to some of the troops that went on ahead. And we just went that way till we got and linked up. We did ourselves, our company didn't link up with the Russians, but the 29 did link up with the Russians at the Elbe River. And I wasn't there. I kind of disappointed they didn't call me up to translate or something, but they did.
Oh, that's right. They could have, yeah.
Well, at any rate, they probably had somebody, because we had a mixture of all kinds of people, you know, that probably had not. The other thing what I'll say is this, that during this period, it was, I think, right after Jülich, and I had this lieutenant, and he was always scrounging around, finding stuff in houses, paintings, and whatever he could find. And I don't remember his name, but I remember his appearance. At any rate, the company was going to attack this this next objective, and 3rd platoon was supposed to go on the left flank, and this guy's not there. And it's whatever the D-Day time was, it was 6 o'clock or 7 or 8 o'clock, so he's not there. I'm a staff sergeant now, in charge of the platoon, and he's not there. So I see all of the 1st and 2nd platoon on the right. They're getting fire from the left, and they're getting wounded, and they're getting casualties. So I take my platoon and I fan them out, and we attack this high ground, and we capture that high ground where these people were shooting from, the Germans were shooting from. And so that we kind of relieved those people on the right, because they were just getting shot up. And I think that's where I got my 2nd Bronze Star.
For that action.
I really think that that lieutenant, to save his ass, I'm sorry, but he actually turned me, I think he turned me in for a Bronze Star, because he wasn't even there. And I just to cover himself. And that's what I feel, that's where I got my 2nd Bronze Star. But he wasn't there, so I just, you know, fell the men out, and we went and I took the high ground, and so we could advance. And
is the resistance that you're facing. It's a different kind of resistance once you get into Germany.
What we're finding out was that as we would go in, and once we got the upper hand, they would retreat and take off. Like,
okay.
Yeah. In other words, if you were trying to take this village or town, and all of a sudden they wouldn't like the Japanese fight to the death, you know. Once they found out that